So the group had decided to work more rigorously and work in terms of trying to find how to develop a curriculum more on an educational philosophy. And so that was what we had decided. And both Nagla and I have a background in education. I have a master's in curriculum instruction. I currently work as a curriculum coordinator. And I also supervise student teachers, and I work as a math instructor. So I have like 3 positions. I've been in the field of education forever. And so this has been one of my new passions, is to work in curriculum. So something I'm doing in day in, day out. So it kind of made sense to work for our Sunday school. And Nagla has her background. She's going to introduce herself.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Nagla Fatouh. I have also been working in education for a really long time. I'm much older than I look, I promise. I'm not 18 or 20. But I've taught high school science.
for testing. Thank you.
Sure. So what are some thoughts? What do you understand from this quote? Yes.
I think the two parts that stuck out to me are the know where you're going and know where you are now. So you have point A and point B that are very clear to you, and then you can draw the line to connect them.
So why do you think that's important? That's great. Because I know you've been doing the teaching a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know how much where you are in your professional life, but I know you've been working with the Sunday school. So why do you think that's an important piece?
It's definitely going to help your design and understand. When you say you know where you are right now, you're thinking about the students and where they are right now, and then where you want them to be. And so when you have that, you know what needs to be cut.
Muslim understanding. So that's a whole unit by itself. So we separate. We're traditionally in a lot of weekend schools, you always see the Shahada, the bearing witness, as part of the 5 pillars, but we actually thought, no, it needs to be by itself because it's a very crucial concept. And it's not only understanding the element of the Shahada, but it's understanding Tawheed and understanding love of God and His attributes. And then we developed it out from KG all the way to 7, developmentally appropriate to those age groups. And then we added 2 more units, global diversity and civic engagement. What does it mean to be civically engaged, and what does it mean to understand the global world? What issues the global diverse world has as a Muslim ummah, as just a global society of human beings. And so that panned out also developmentally from KG through 7. So once we did this whole layout, which took a lot of time and thinking and reading and kind of thinking like what's really, really important, what do we really want the students to come out with? And then we took it for each grade level, we went into the actual unit development. So we took each theme, and then per grade, we used this philosophy and developed them out. So that kind of gives you the big picture of how we went through processing this. Okay, so that those units you have, before we did those, we went and developed this out.
And inshallah, all of you will have this at some point. Sorry, I expanded it to 14, but for some reason it keeps going back again. But inshallah, all of you will have this. Our ultimate goal is right now we're leaving you with kind of the first unit, which will be character. So that's the packet that you have. And then inshallah, what we'll do is we'll be pulling together a binder with, the first semester worth of stuff, as well as the scope and sequence, which is, the entire year worth or 2 years worth of all the topics that will be covered. So if we think about this, do you mind if I just jump in?
Oh, no.
So if you think about this in terms of curriculum versus lesson plan, like we were talking about, your curriculum is definitely, this whole entire thing. And then when you look at each of the themes, for example, the topics listed under KG1, you can think of character as your unit, and then your lesson plan would be what you design to teach or how to teach honesty, respect, kindness, fairness, caring, generosity, and love. Right? So it's kind of taking it and then tapering it down so that you're narrowing it and focusing in on whatever that topic is that you want your students to walk away with having understood. I don't know if that helps a little bit in terms of some context for some of the language as well.
Questions on this? How it's laid out, what it means to you?
When you laid this out, did you have in mind that character would end up being around 4 weeks and that type of breakdown, or did you leave that open?
No, we actually, on the unit, you'll see the duration, and for each theme, we tried to say 3 to 4 Sundays, just because there's really not that many Sundays.
Right.
So we did try to make it about 3 to 4 Sundays according to teacher discretion. But the idea is, again, that across the school, pre-K 7, your first unit, everybody's talking about character. And so that also creates a cross-curricular conversation, so that all the students are talking about character, so you can have a whole school conversation about that. And then theme number 2 would be the next unit, and so on and so forth.
And this will go for Islamic Studies and Sira and Arabic, keeping it in mind that Islamic Studies will be teaching these characters.
Yeah.
And it all comes together.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we tried to do is that if you look at, character in particular is something that we're hoping will continue to pop up throughout the course of the year, because that's at the crux of our religion, of our deen. So what we tried to do also is, as we thought about the topics for character for each grade level, we tried to tie those in also as you're talking about prophets and role models, and as you're talking about some of the other units as you move further down. And so that way it's very easy to integrate that and go back and say, hey, listen, we were talking about, generosity and, honesty or whatever it is, respect. And so when you're talking about, so-and-so, then you can build that into it and have that conversation with the kids and tie it back to something that was there earlier on. And then likewise, as you move kind of down the grades, we tried to think about the complexity of each of the different, in this case, character traits that people would embody, and that they have the ability to process and understand at that age level. So that, inshallah, is something that you can have a deeper conversation about, but builds on to previous years, but also is age appropriate for them as they start to think about how they're dealing with the world and tying it back to the real world, which is really, really important and really crucial to help the kids understand it. If they can't make that mental connection between what it is that they've learned about and how it applies to the world around them, then it's just going to disappear and they're going to forget about it. But if they can make that connection and relate it to something that happened to them that day or that week or in their life, or whatever it is, then inshallah that's something that will stick with them and that will be a part of who they are as they move forward, inshallah.
All right, so that's just the overall. So I'm going to get into how these units were developed. You do have the sample for the first theme. So if you look at it, it'll say the title of the unit. All right, and then it's what subject, and then this is, like I said, character unit. So you're all looking at the same unit right now, regardless of where you're at. Whether you're teaching the Arabic or Islamic studies or Quran, you're all looking at the same thing. So, as I told you, this unit development comes from the philosophy of backward design, and then specifically these two gentlemen who created this integration of this specific philosophy. So backward design is different people have come up with different ways how to implement it. These two gentlemen called McTighe and Wiggins, they actually created a whole industry. They go train teachers not only across the US, but actually they also go internationally. They've gone to China, they've gone to Europe, and they developed this industry of how to use a backward design template. So what you have there is a unit design template in front of you. And I'm going to explain to you, if you look at it, there are 3 stages. There's a stage 1, so you'll see, it'll say stage 1, right? So if you want to follow, if you're opening to that page where it says stage 1, and then if you flip, you have a stage 2, and then if you flip, there's a stage 3. Okay, if you can't find 1, 2, and 3, raise your hand and I'll point them out to you on the unit, on this packet right here. Here's stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3.
Yeah, it's just back
Does that make sense? Are we good? So I'm going to explain to you what these stages mean in terms of just education philosophy. All right? So stage 1 is the most important stage. Traditionally, teachers think stage 3, which is the lesson plan part, as the most important stage. It's because they're trying to get through that day of like, what am I going to do? But actually, when experts talk about curriculum development, stage 1 is the most important because this is the stage where you are trying to make sure you're focusing on what do I want my kids to come out with. So the question you always have in stage 1 as curriculum developers is this word transfer. What is the ultimate transfer we seek as a result of this unit? So after I've taught this unit for 4 weeks, what do I really, really want the students to come out with? Does that make sense? That's the big question you're asking yourself. Now, as a person, then you start to say, all right, I'm teaching, for example, I teach math, or I teach Islamic studies, or whatever it is you're teaching. I'm teaching Arabic or Quran. What do I really think is after they leave my class for 1 year, do I really want them to know? So for example, I will give this example as a math teacher. Do I really think it's so important in real life as a 40-year-old adult right now that they know the quadratic formula? How many adults right now use quadratic formula in your everyday life? Okay, you use it in your everyday life as a teacher. How do you use it everyday life? As a student. Okay, outside the school, is that really an important transfer? Not really. I mean, I have to be honest with myself. So when I sit and talk about the quadratic formula, for me to have integrity as a teacher, I'm like, I know you're not going to use it in everyday life. I really do know that. But then I try to explain that you have to understand relationships and patterns. Do I think we look at patterns and relationships in everyday life? Yes, I really do. As human beings, I think we're always trying to create patterns and relationships. So for me, the transfer is I don't really care if you know the formula by heart and you can spit it out. That's not important. What's important for me is you see math as patterns and relationships and that there's an appreciation of math civilization. That to me is more important than the little nuanced detail. And that's what transfer is. So when you're up there talking with your classroom, like right now for all of you, do I really care that you will know how to say transfer by the end of this? Not really. Do I really care that you know that it's important that you're thinking about what you want those students to come out with? Yes. Now, whether you can tell me it's stage 1 and UBD called transfer, I don't care. I care that you care about the students you're gonna have and that you're really thinking with integrity, what's really the important piece I want them to leave with. So that's stage 1. So if you look at it right now and just kind of skim it, you'll see for the character unit, these are the things that we really want the students to leave. Those characters that you have displayed, I really want the students to know in my Islamic studies. Do I really care that at the end of the day they're going to tell me a hadith narrated word for word? I do care, but do I care more that they have embodied this character and realize that it's a really important character? That's what I want them to go out with. And it's the same thing for all the units. That after they have left that unit, it's about those big things that I want them to leave with. So that's stage 1. So that's the end back work that me and Nagdat have been doing, is kind of thinking about what is really important and what do we want the students to leave with. All right, questions on stage 1, the transfer.
So in this new curriculum, besides having the overall big picture, all these units, you guys have already filled in that big picture statement.
Yes. So you don't have to do that. As teachers, we're giving it to you. Stage 1. Yes, we're hoping to alleviate the work. But what's important is that you have to read this and realize, okay, this is what we really need to get out of my first grader or second grader, is this stage 1.
So for every unit, you're going to have stage 1, stage 2, stage 3?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
No.
We are only developing 1 and 2, and we're going to walk through today how stage 3 would be developed out.
Okay.
Stage 3 would be the lesson plan.
Ah,
So
Yes.
gotcha.
that's the
gotcha.
teacher.
That's where your work is going to come in as teachers. You're going to develop the lesson plan, looking at stage 1 and 2 as your goal to figure out, okay, now how am I going to get my students to get this big picture? Does that make sense? So now we've weaved in the big picture and the concepts. You're going to kind of think about what am I going to do to get them to get this stage 1 stuff.
That's not, can I jump in?
Sure, please.
The other thing I wanted to say is that, one of the main reasons why we didn't do stage 3 is because you're the ones interacting with the students, every single week. And so you're best equipped to be able to figure out how to best teach them. What is it that works for your students? What doesn't work for them? So that I think is really important as we think through. It's not that we're slacking off and trying, to give you guys everything, all of that on your plate, but that we really felt strongly that it's important for you to have a really big say in that part of it, because that's your expertise. And then the other part is that this is, obviously since this is new, feedback from you is also going to be really, really important for us. So as you're looking through this, as you're working through it, any questions that pop up, whether it's with Rich or with the next principal, or however it is that we'll figure out some sort of way to communicate it. We'll inshallah both be on site at different points in time, but make sure that you're communicating back to us what's working, what's not working, what makes sense, what maybe is too high or too low for your students. So that also is going to be really important because you're the eyes and ears of the Muhammad Web Foundation in the classroom. So that is really important to us as well. Sorry.
Very good, no, thank you. Or also give your feedback back to Rich, because we see him in the
Yeah.
school committee, so we'll be hearing from you and just your thoughts. Stage 1 also has, it's okay, we'll move into it in a second. If you look on your document, there's a part that says essential questions and enduring understandings. Do you guys see that? So on the right column, it says essential questions. On the left column, it says enduring understandings. This is a really crucial part of stage 1, which I'm going to get into in a minute. But right now, I'm just going through the overall 3 stages. All right, so stage 2, so if we go to the next page, which is stage 2, that's your assessment part, and that's the part where we tried to come up with one sample assessment in the box for you to possibly use as a way of evidence. Remember that defined assessment, so that's your testing, that's you trying to figure out, did the students really get these concepts? All right, so stage 2 is pretty simple. It's what's the evidence of understanding. If you don't think that assessment is appropriate and you want to come up with your own, by all means go ahead and do so, but please just make sure you're assessing those things we're talking about in stage 1. All right, so for example, if you said, oh, I don't want my students to draw, because one of the assessments says to draw, and you want them to do something else, make sure it has to do with character, right? Those first stage 1 things. Because if they don't have anything to do with stage 1, then kind of defeats the purpose. Okay, so stage 2 is creating the evidence for what was developed in stage 1. So there has to be a connection between those two. And then lastly, this is the part we're going to work with all of you today, stage 3. This is where